person. And the CIA intelligence constantly echoed these themes. They spoke of Uzbeks having been in Al-Qaeda, been in training camps, and having met Osama bin Laden. In fact, by now we were in 2002 and 2003, when apparently we didn't know where Osama bin Laden was, and the way he managed to see thousands of Uzbeks every year, it really should have been slightly easier to track him down, I felt. It wasn't hard to put two and two together and work out that the fact that every political prisoner I ever knew of in Uzbekistan who was taken was tortured, and the fact that we knew what they were being forced to confess to under torture, and the fact that the CIA material came up with exactly the same rather dodgy narrative, it wasn't hard to put the two together and realize that the intelligence material was coming from torture. But before I did anything, I wanted to make sure that I was on safe ground. So I asked my deputy, a lady called Karen Moran, to go to the American embassy and say to the head of the CIA station there, my ambassador is worried because he thinks your intelligence may be coming from torture. And she came back and she reported to me that the reply from the head of the CIA station in Tashkent was, yes, of course it's coming from torture. We don't see that as a problem in the context of the war on terror. Now, I did see that as a problem, particularly when I discovered that the CIA were bringing in people, flying in people to Uzbekistan and handing them over to the Uzbek security services. I'd like to say that I was the one who discovered extraordinary rendition, but it's not quite true, because I falsely presumed, that these people they were bringing in and handing over to the Uzbek security service were Uzbeks who had been captured elsewhere and brought back to Uzbekistan. I did not realize that, in fact, they were of many other nationalities and were being handed over in order to be tortured. But they were being tortured, I knew. That Uzbekistan was a destination for the extraordinary rendition system from all over the world, I really didn't quite realize at the time. We now know, following, for example, the Council of Europe investigation, that 90% of the aeroplanes that stopped at the famous secret prison in Poland had Tashkent as their next destination. I complained back to London. I said, we're getting this intelligence from torture. It's illegal, it's immoral, and it's unreliable. It's vastly exaggerating the strength of Al-Qaeda in Central Asia. How did I know it was unreliable? Well, let me just give you a couple of examples. We had one piece of intelligence which said that a detainee had admitted to being in a training camp at given coordinates in the hills above Samarkand in Tajikistan. And as it happened, my defense attaché, Colonel Ridout, had recently been to that precise location, and there was nothing there. My favorite example, because when people were tortured, they not only had to confess to membership of Al-Qaeda, but remember, this torture was being done by the direct descendants of Stalin's KGB. Institutionally, it was still Stalin's KGB set up in Tashkent. And they had, exactly as under Stalin, to denounce other people. They were given names of people to denounce. Very often, they didn't know the name of anyone in this list of names they were given. Sometimes they did. Sometimes they denounced relatives and classmates. But the intelligence would contain long lists of names of Al-Qaeda members who had been denounced by detainees. And very often, these were farcical. And I remember one long list of Al-Qaeda members which I received in a CIA intelligence report, and I recognized one of the names. It was an old professor I knew. It was a very brave old dissident who had been a dissident in Soviet times, and I knew the man, and he was a Jehovah's Witness. Now, there are not many Jehovah's Witnesses in Al-Qaeda. I would be willing to bet that Al-Qaeda don't even try and recruit Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, I'm quite sure the Jehovah's Witnesses would try and recruit Al-Qaeda. They could, knocking on the cave door saying, is Mr. Bin Laden in? But I have a copy of a watchtower for him. I essentially found it hard to believe a lot of this intelligence. I got called back to London, and I expected there, to have a sensible talk about the merits or demerits of the intelligence and how much evidence I had that it was obtained under torture. I was absolutely stunned, genuinely stunned. It changed my whole worldview in an instant to be told that London knew it was coming from torture, but it was not illegal because our legal advisors had decided that under the United Nations Convention Against Torture, it is not illegal to obtain or use intelligence gained from torture as long as we didn't do the torture ourselves. I just couldn't believe the chap who was telling me this, the Foreign Office's chief legal advisor, Sir Michael Wood, was somebody I'd known for many, many years. He was a nice man. He is a nice man. And how somebody, I thought, you're talking about children being tortured in front of their parents, and you're saying, well, I don't think Clause 4 quite covers it, given this particular legal meaning of the word complicity. That brought home to me this idea of the banality of evil, if you like. If you think about Auschwitz, the truth about the Holocaust is that we like to pretend that actually only a very few number of Germans knew about it. Not true at all. Hundreds of thousands of people were involved in it. Guards, civilians, all kinds of people were involved in the organization of that massive scale operation. And the truth is, and this is the sad truth, the vast majority of the hundreds of thousands of people involved in it were ordinary, decent, nice people who were good neighbours and kind to their kids, who were involved in mass murder. Just as the many thousands of British and American CIA members, soldiers, civil servants, diplomats, who know about and were involved in things like extraordinary rendition. They aren't devils. They don't have horns on their heads. The truth is that when a government persuades its people it is under a terrible threat, people can easily be made to lose their moral values, to lose their moral compass. And I think by getting into torture, we did that. But why did we do it, and what was the motive? And this is where I hope that personal story will link in briefly with what Larry was saying to you earlier. Well, the motive was to justify the alliance with President Karimov by vastly exaggerating the Islamic threat which he was facing.